myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Wednesday night, so we're surprising you a little bit. I'm joined by Supermac, Malcolm MacDonald, and Gibbo is on his way. We've just been pre-recording a show which will go out when probably in August. I think that's when we'll put it out, and it's a show with Gibbo, Malcolm, where he gives us his music recollections. And I'm sure, having spent many years with John, you will know he has a few tales of meetings with people like this man, Elton John, for example, over a cup of coffee, and a little natter between him and Elton. It does feature in the programme, but some great stories, some great recollections. We have just recorded that, so hence we are a little bit late. So apologies for that. And while John, it will be. And as I said, the one thing that's synonymous there is that Gibbo hasn't got a cap on. Elton John has got a cap on, but the man nowadays he's followed in their footsteps. There he is. Look.
Yeah, it's the Elton John lookalike.
It's the Rocket Man. It's the Rocket Man.
How are you doing, guys?
I'm good, man. I'm just telling Malcolm what you've been up to.
Seen you, haven't I? Have I just seen you?
Yeah. Well, I've just told the viewers what we've been doing, so they're eagerly anticipating it. It's something a little bit different, so we are looking forward to that. What I will do, though, guys, before we start, is I'm going to give a shout out to our sponsors nice and early, because I know we're going to be doing the last 2 seasons of Malcolm's career tonight. Yeah. So a big thank you to Spider Miner, worldwide coverage from the lads. The only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors 01913897245. And a Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.gohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wolves and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to Cleekai, meet the new Game Over screen, drop into a Clearrun device near you, available on Apple Store, Google Play, and clearrun.game. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. We're also available as a podcast, usually goes up 24 hours after the show has finished. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. If you want to become a member, click join underneath the video, or go to this QR code with your smartphone, put the camera over it, and it takes you straight to the website, NUFCmatters.com, and go to membership. What do you get for your membership on the website? Well, you get a nice cup, a pen, and a scarf, and you also get entry into the monthly draw with your membership card. So well worth putting some money into that. We also give away a free car sticker if you're a subscriber. Simply email john@nufcmatters.com to get your free car sticker now. We support the food bank on this show as well. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is the website to go to make a virtual donation. If you want to be in it to win the Shearer signed ball, then raffle tickets are $2.99. Go to nufcmatters.com and you could be the winner of that signed ball, signed on the 7th of April by Alan. And just a shout out as well to the event that's going on at the Surf Cafe. Of course, Gibbo and Malcolm were on there only a couple of weeks ago, Thursday the 13th of October. John Anderson will be down at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Only 35 tickets available. Go to the Tynemouth Surf Cafe website to buy your tickets tonight. And just a big shout out to Peter Beardsley, whose website is now up and running. Monday night training, and July, August summer camp. Booking available now. Info at peterbeardsleysoccerschool.com. So peterbeardsleysoccerschool.com is the website. I know there was a few of you keen to get your youngsters enrolled when we had a couple of places left last week. Well, now he is taking bookings for July and August for the summer camp. So get yourself to the website, peterbeardsleysoccerschool.com. You can find all the information you need there. how to get your youngsters involved. Okay, it is time for me to take a back seat now that I've got that out of the way and let John continue with the amazing story, really, of Malcolm's career at St James's Park.
Yeah, Malcolm, looking at two momentous seasons, your last two seasons with us, because the first one, 1974-75, was Joe Harvey's last season of a glittering career at Newcastle. And of course, the one that followed, 75-76, was the first of Gordon Lee and the League Cup, and yes, and the last of you. So we had Joe out of the door and then you out of the door. But let's look first at 1974-75. We just had the FA Cup final. What a lot of people don't realise with Joe, it was to be, although we didn't realise, his last season of a very glittering career with Newcastle, appropriately, because we always seem to do something under Joe appropriately in his last season. Maybe we only finished 15th, but we won the Texaco Cup, which was the final gesture of Joe's winning periods, if you like, Malcolm. And then just to give the figures, because I always give your personal figures before we do each one, you went back to what you always did, which is as long as you were fit. You played in every game in the league, 42 league games, 21 goals, again 1 and 2. Fabulous ratio over a long season. FA Cup, 2 games, no goals. League Cup, 6 games, 6 goals. Texaco Cup, 8 games, 5 goals. Putting that together competitively, you played 58 games that season for 32 goals, which is not quite shabby and is slightly more than prior to the Eddie Howe days. The whole of Newcastle United scored in a season, not just a centre forward, almost. So interesting, nostalgic. And before we start, I am mentioning that I've already mentioned Joe's last season. That was significant, Malcolm, because I think a little bit of the heart went out of you when Joe disappeared, because he'd been such a great Newcastle manager for you. And of course, he was the longest serving manager we'd had and the longest serving skipper we'd had at Newcastle at that time, which is quite a record, Malcolm.
Yes, incredible record. But in between being a player and then a manager, he was actually coach for a while, wasn't he?
He was coaching 55 when they won the cup.
Yes, yeah.
He coached the side in 55.
And really, Joe, looking back, he it's certainly the most successful post-war manager for Newcastle. And when he was actually sacked just after the end of the season, nobody could believe it. It was the most, dare I say, moronic decision. One of the most awful decisions that I've ever come across in football.
And hugely hurt him, Malcolm.
Yes, it would. It would. Because he was able to bring a certain success to the club. You know, that there were minor trophies, but there were an awful lot of teams finishing with nothing at the end of every season. But we were at least winning minor trophies, and we looked to have cup runs and what have you. That league form, it was always up and down, very up and down. But the part of the reason for that, I think, is that we worked on a very, very small squad, very small, and so you weren't encouraged to get injured. You
played with injuries, Malcolm. You played with injuries, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh, yes, very much so. But I think our attitude to it all was quite different to what we experience these days. But anyway, and I looked over the record, John, and what I didn't realise was that the last 3 seasons that I was there, so that was the cup final season, the season that we're talking about now,
and the League Cup.
Yes, we finished 15th every time.
Yeah.
3 seasons in a row.
Which is uncanny, isn't it?
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah, quite uncanny.
The interesting thing, Malcolm, in maybe your comment, but after we played in the FA Cup final the previous year, the Newcastle team was changing. It changes significantly once we get Gordon Lee in, but it was beginning to change. I mean, Bob Moncur had gone.
Yes, he went after the cup final, didn't he?
Yes, Bob Moncur had gone.
Sunderland.
McDermott went during that season. We had Tommy Craig Nulty coming into the side.
Yes.
So the thing was significantly changing. What wasn't changing very early on, if I can mention, you scored 2 in your first 2 league games, you scored 4 in your first 6 games of the season. But interestingly enough, and this is the spell I'm interested in, and I'll ask you about, you scored 2 goals against Chelsea when we won 5-0. You scored 2 goals against Liverpool when we won 4-1. You scored 2 goals against Burnley when we won 3-0, and 2 goals at Ipswich when we lost 5-4. So in that spell, starting with the Liverpool game, you scored 8 goals in 5 games. It was a very significant spell. And when you think that we beat Chelsea 5-0 and we beat Liverpool 4-1, they're big results, Malcolm.
Yeah. They were big results. But I think in the dressing room, we always got that impression that the board were never quite prepared to back us and, of course, Joe Harvey. And Joe, he was reduced to sort of getting pretty much 1 player in per season. And it would be for a sort of sum of maybe up to 100 grand. But if we had had a larger squad, more choice for Joe and Coach Keith Birkinshaw to work with, then I think we could have maybe gone pushing on
because Joe's big strength.
Sorry,
Joe's big strength, Malcolm, for me, looking in from the outside, from the sidelines, was that he was great at picking up talent. I mean,
yes, he was.
He signed you, who had never played in the top flight before until you come to Newcastle. He signed Terry Hibbert, who wasn't a regular in the Leeds side.
Yes.
He was Leeds reserves, if you like. He signed Terry McDermott, who was playing at Bury
Town.
He signed Tony Green from Blackpool. He signed Paddy Howard from Barnsley. He signed players with he had a terrific eye for talent, and he signed players so well that if I had been chairman, I would have been encouraged by his record to back him, Malcolm.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what the board really didn't see or realise was that Joe was actually making the very best of a reduced situation, and that's how we were playing. It was a reduced situation all the time. That pretty much you looked. We were 12 players, and the 12th man was usually John Cowan.
Yes,
he was number 12 all the while.
If you look, Malcolm, at the overall record, before you come as well, the overall record of Joe Harvey, who was a Newcastle manager, 11 years or whatever it was, he brought them up from the second division as champions. There wasn't ever a relegation in the whole of his record as a manager in 11 years. There was no relegation. He won the European Fairs Cup. He made the FA Cup final. He won the Anglo-Italian. He won 2 Texarkos. He consistently kept us up there against all the odds and appearing in big games.
Yes,
and
yes, he did.
in big games.
And it was all on a shoestring.
Yes,
I couldn't help but feel, and I don't wish to be unkind to the people, the directors on the board, but they were really small time thinkers in the main, in terms of football. That there were some very highly talented people on that board, but they couldn't grasp how the way that football should actually go, and I think it must have been very frustrating for Joe, because they loved tagging along with him to go and watch players and what have you, but it was all a bit of a jolly for them. And that was the impression that I got, that the club was doing more for them than they were doing for the club.
Can you tell me, Malcolm, how you learned about Joe Harvey was going? We know famously you were in South Africa and learned how Gordon Lee was coming, but Joe Harvey going, that was...
Well, this was
involved as well, Malcolm, wasn't he?
The season had just ended, and I used to go for lunch most days with Frank Clark. We used to go to a place that was called the Milkmaid. That's the dairy, cafe, restaurant type place, and I've been chatting with Frank Clark. His contract was coming to an end, and he'd been saying, well, he said, Joe's invited me to go in, have a chat and what have you. I said, well, good luck, mate. A lot of people didn't appreciate Frank for what he was. But when asked the question, who's the best defender you've played with? Frank Clark. Absolutely. As a defender, he was absolutely top notch. He really was. He used to frustrate the crowd, I know, in a number of ways. They wanted him to go flying into tackles and stuff like that, but no.
Charging over the halfway line, Malcolm, which you didn't do, of course.
Absolutely, yes. And that wasn't Frank's game. He just made sure that he didn't get beat, and that he waited, because wingers will tempt you with the ball, and then as you just go for it, just sends you a bit off balance, and whoops, and all of a sudden they've gone. Frank never got caught like that, and he just made sure that the right winger he was marking wasn't going to get crosses into the box, wasn't going to come inside and get shots on. And he was just able to nullify a winger, and wingers of really high quality. And he was absolutely terrific at that. Okay, he was lost crossing the halfway line. And I see great similarities between him and a current Newcastle player, Paul Dummett. Great similarities between them.
Very good defender, but not so good going the other way.
Crossing the halfway line, that's right.
So what happened with this lunch with
Frank? We were having lunch, and he was saying, right, well, I'm in talks with Joe Harvey, and he said we're sort of getting there, and he said, I'm due to have another meeting with him a bit later this week. Now the season had finished, and we were just doing some training and stuff in there. I was due to go and I think join the England squad, and then I was going to fly out to South Africa and play there.
Yeah,
and so I kept training, and Frank always kept his fitness sky high, and all of a sudden he said, this was a couple of days later, and he hadn't seen, and he expected to see Joe, and he was in there for like 2 or 3 minutes, and he just came out and he was absolutely white, his face completely white, the blood had totally disappeared from him, his mouth was open, and he just looked in utter shock. And I said, Frank, what the hell is the matter with you? Oh, he says, you're not going to believe what's happened. So I said, well, come on. And we went away down the car park, and so nobody could overhear us. And he said, I'm leaving. I said, what? I said, you're kidding me? He says, no. He said, I've just been in to see Joe, and Joe he said he's absolutely heartbroken, and he didn't know how to express the news to me. He was just completely lost. He said, as lost as I am now. He said, he said, because I expected to be sitting with Joe and just finalising the details for a new contract, and he said, I'm really sorry, Frank, on this. He said, but everything that's gone on recently over a new contract, he said, it's at an end. He said, the board have instructed me to give you a free transfer and not a new contract. And of course, Frank, it was just absolutely gobsmacked. And so that was it. Instead of signing a new contract, he was actually walking out the club for the last time as a Newcastle player. That was him, gone, finished, over and done with. And just couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked. And then I think it was either 2 or 3 days later, Joe was sacked by the board. First it was Frank, then it was Joe. And Joe was just out, gone. And again, what the hell's going on here? And this was a board that they were quite nice fellas, but all of a sudden there was a real hatchet job going on, and we thought, what on earth is this all about? They're getting rid of a manager who has brought success. It might be limited success, but he's done the very best with what was at his disposal, and he was never allowed more to go and compete with sides that spent an awful lot more, and so it was all absolutely mind blowing. But
you were away, Malcolm, weren't you, with England and then in South Africa?
I joined the England squad, and then and that was for a fortnight, and then I came home and literally emptied my bag, repacked it, and shot off to South Africa, and
that's where you famously found out about Gordon Lee, of course.
Oh yes, I was playing for a side called Lusitano in Johannesburg. They were run by the Portuguese community. They played in the Rand Stadium, which was it was the biggest stadium in South Africa, and fabulous pitch. Oh, fabulous pitch. It really was. And I played the first game. It was an evening match, and I sort of started to make a run toward, because you have to remember that there was the apartheid was at its height at the time. Very uncomfortable situation, very, and you had the main stand on one side, and then that was for all whites, the two ends, all white, and then on the far side was a very large terrace, and it was absolutely packed to the gunnels, and it was all black people. And that was where they had to go. They couldn't go anywhere else in the ground. And so I started to sort of drift out towards that side of the pitch, and I wasn't far from the sideline, and I took a deep breath, and I went, oh, I went a bit high. And I thought, what's that smell? And they were smoking it's the South African version of pot, of marijuana, cannabis. It's called dagga. And they're all smoking it up on the terraces, and of course blowing the smoke down onto that side of the pitch. And I started to go high as a kite. I had to go and play on the other side. But the winger, he loved it over there.
He wanted to play there.
But anyway, I was having a very interesting time over there, although the apartheid was making me very uncomfortable, very. And one afternoon, because it was a part-time situation over there, and so we used to train in the evenings. And one afternoon, I had a couple of hours on the bed. I had a little sleep before I had to go to the ground for that training session that evening. And the phone rang, and there happened to be a very familiar voice at the end of the phone. And it was you, of course. And you said, hello, Mel. I said, hello, John. How's things? And you said, well, interesting. You said, they've just appointed a new man. And I went, oh, really? Go on, tell me. And you gave me 3 guesses. You said, I'll give you
didn't get it.
To who it is. My first was Brian Clough, and you said, no, not him. My second was Bobby Robson, and you said, no, not him. And at the end of that, I said, oh, please don't tell me it's Jackie Charlton. Oh, no, please don't tell me it's Jackie Charlton. He and we'd had so many battles on the field. I couldn't imagine us in the same dressing room. But we became good friends later on, in recent years to now, before he passed away, bless him. And we used to go and have lunch together with our wives. And you said, no, it's not Jackie Charlton either. I said, well, I give up. Who is it? And you said they've appointed Gordon Lee. And I had to really think hard, and I said, Gordon, who? I'd never heard of him. And his name was alien to me. And
Absolutely.
And the back page of the Evening Chronicle the next day, in the very biggest thick black capital letters that you've ever seen on the back page, read, Gordon who, ? Says Supermac from South Africa in smaller print.
I I don't think Gordon Lee ever forgive you or ever forgive me during the whole time he was here. Like, to be
I don't think he did. No.
but it was a shock.
When I got back from South Africa, John, I thought, right, I'll and I'd sort of caught up on local news and what have you, and I thought, right, I'm going to drive in. It was a few days before we were to report back for training. And I thought I'd go in there and just welcome him to the club and introduce myself. And so I went, but I can be a bit lax on names. And I'd read in the paper that it was Gordon Lee and his coach was Richard Dinnis. Yeah. And so, having driven into the club, I parked the car, went up the steps, was heading for the main entrance, the main doors. And Richard Dinnis, who we see here, he came out. He came walking out of that door. And I went up with my hand outstretched to shake his hand. I said, oh, hello, Mr. Richards. I said, my name's Malcolm McDonald. I said, welcome to the club. And he said, I'm not Dennis Richards. My name is Richard Dinnis. And I went, whoops, sorry about that. Whoops. Went in. So it wasn't the best of starts with him. Went into the ground, walked in along the corridor and got to the manager's office, knocked on the door. There was a come in I went. And I said, I'm Malcolm McDonald, and I've come to introduce myself, Mr. Lee, and I've come to wish you all the very best here at the club. And his first words were to me, tell me about Terry Hibbett. I hear he's a troublemaker. And I went, whoa. I said, all you need to know is he's got the best left foot in the first division, and the best passer of ball going, and he is an absolute brilliant footballer. You don't need to know any more than that. And I then turned on my heel and walked out, and I thought, that is not the way for a manager to start. And I could see trouble ahead, real trouble. And of course, I contacted Terry, and I just said, beware. He's expecting a lot of trouble from you.
The interesting thing, Malcolm, in this is what I was wanting to bring up, looking at the actual team and the end of an era with Joe Harvey and the beginning of uncertainty, because there can be an argument that to a certain extent Gordon Lee got to a League Cup final in 5th in the table or whatever, but he went under very bad circumstances. But the team itself was changing. I mean, just looking at the names there, Mike Mahoney, good pal of both of us.
Mm-hmm. Lovely fellow, mate.
Good lad. Come in for Willie McFaul.
And a good goalkeeper.
Yes, he was. Kennedy came in for Clark, but Hibby went 4 games into the 1975-76 season. We've told the story. You've told the story many times on how that happened with Birmingham and how disgraceful that was. Burns ended up on the wing there. Graham Oates come in, who we would all prefer to forget about. And Alan Gowling came in as your partner in place of John Tudor, who was on his way out as well. There was a lot, perhaps inevitably with the new manager, but there was a lot changing during that season. You still played 56 games and scored 24 goals. And I know that all the time you weren't playing as a centre forward, and I'm about to ask you about that. And we also made the League Cup final, of course, where I felt we played well. as a team, we played
Yes.
well. Lost.
Yeah, it was a Newcastle supporter who did for us.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
That
But,
unbelievable overhead free kick from Dennis Stewart. Yeah, and we were on top at the time. We were going to go down, but we equalised, and from there we really started to get on top. And it wasn't long after half time, was it, that Dennis scored
Stewart with the overhead bicycle kick.
Yeah. Couldn't believe it.
And I mean, what really was sickening from my point of view, apart from him being a pal of mine, was that he was a Geordie lad, born in Heaton. Newcastle had bombed him out for being too small as a kid. He'd made his name at Sunderland and played in the cup final when they beat Leeds. And here he was with an overhead kick against us. I thought, thank you very much. This is just what I need. But it was like that. If I can bring you on, mate, because one of the interesting things for me was that in that year, if you remember, and you'll remember ever so well, we did well in both the cups. Not only did we get to Wembley in the League Cup, but we got to the 6th round of the FA Cup. And the thing that intrigues me, because I thought it was one of your great goals. Yes, we've got the 2 against Burnley in the semi-final of the Cup. We've got the wonderful, wonderful goal against Leicester when the cameras weren't there, etc., etc. But we played at Bolton in the 5th round of the FA Cup. We drew 3-3. You scored 2. And on the stroke of half-time, I remember you swiveled on a throw-in and stuck the ball in the top corner. It was absolute sensational.
From a Tommy Craig throw-in.
Throw-in it was, wasn't
it? It was level with the edge of the box. And we had actually practiced it for a little while, that I would sort of come towards him and sort of indicate for it to go down on my left foot coming round. And I would go there, but he would throw it behind me and I would spin round and catch it on the volley. And it worked. The week before, we tried it against West Ham at St James Park, and I hit the top of the bar with it. So, persevere. And the second time that we tried it, it actually worked, and in the far corner it went. Barry Siddle was in goal, and I've sat with Barry on 1 or 2 occasions, and he says that's the best goal that's ever.
He played for Sunderland at one stage, I think, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He also in that game, Malcolm, which you will remember only too well, he smashed Nulty's jaw. I think he was trying to punch the ball out of the penalty area, and Nulty missed the lead.
Sure, and he was a big lad, wasn't he? Big lad. So that punch had a lot behind it.
It was like Sonny Liston. Yeah, it was like it rearranged your face. Those sort of punches did. The funny thing is, we took 3, because I said that game you scored 2, but we still drew 3-3. It took us 3 games to get past Bolton in the FA Cup. I think Peter Reid played in that Bolton side.
I think he did, yes. He did.
He was a good player.
And then somebody who was later to become the Newcastle manager, he played.
Sam Allardyce.
Sam Allardyce.
He played against you.
Yeah.
That's how he scored 2.
That's but
I forgot about Sam. Yes, he did.
Yeah, and after the game, I got home, and the following day, I went down with flu, and so I missed both replays.
Funny you should say that. I remember now. Paul Cannell played.
That's right. I went down with flu, and oh dear, and it was really, really nasty. And I've never known a dose of flu quite as bad as that. I was really, really poorly. I was in bed for, must have been a good 10, 14 days, and so missed the 2 replays.
Yes. Yeah. I
And,
mean, the big memory for me of the League Cup run really was the fact that we beat Tottenham over 2 legs in the
in the
semi-final.
semi-final, yes,
We lost 1-0 down there, but won
that's right.
3-1 here.
Yeah, we lost 1-0 down there. Pat Jennings was absolutely out of this world. There was a fantastic shot from Tommy Craig about 25 yards out, and Pat Jennings, he dived and stretched right into the top corner and just tipped it over the bar.
He was tasty, Malcolm.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
really. And
Did you play with him at Arsenal? Did you play with him
yes,
at Arsenal?
yeah.
I thought you did. Yes.
Yeah, my second season there, he came,
Yes.
and he was something that I'd never really come across in terms of goalkeeping before. For example, that there was a corner, and I'd gone back for it, and the corner was cleared, and it came to one of the midfield players who controlled it and looked to shoot, and we had all pushed right out, and he's hit this shot like a rocket, and Pat Jennings was positioned on the edge of his 6-yard box, and he just saw the shot coming, and he went bar, and sure enough, it hit the bar and deflected right out again, a bit of at an angle. And Pat Jennings, still without having looked behind him, he just shuffled around a little bit to get in the right position for where the ball
he had hands like shovels, Malcolm, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, hands, feet, and ears. They were all like shovels, but he was a lovely, lovely, lovely fella. But of course, he broke Willie McFall's heart.
Of course, because
if it hadn't have been for Pat Jennings being around at that time, Willie McFall would have got about 120 Northern Ireland caps.
I think he ended up with about 6, Malcolm. I think he sat on the bench about 100 times.
Sure. Yeah, he was getting blisters on his backside.
Yes, he was, because of Jennings. The interesting thing for me, and we have in previous times not only told about Lee coming, but told about how you went to Arsenal. For me, the interesting thing was that having gone to Arsenal, the thing that intrigued me as a journo who had been a big supporter of yourself publicly and privately at Newcastle, was me looking towards the new season and saying, we're going to play Arsenal twice. That's going to be interesting when we play Arsenal twice. And obviously I was at both games. The first one, which I'll ask you to comment on, we played down there on what I would consider Whitley Bay ice rink.
Yes. It was the only game on.
Right.
Everything had been postponed all around the country, and a match of the day cameras were all rushed from another ground to Highbury, because Highbury was the only ground that had underfloor heating. And it was the only one that was guaranteed to be played the next day. So the BBC went there, because otherwise they wouldn't have a game to show on the Saturday night.
5-3, you scored a hat-trick. Mickey Burns got 2 of ours who played very well for us.
Yeah.
But you scored 3. I've got to admit, it's the only time in my life I've sat in the press box to cover Newcastle United and being delighted that Newcastle lost, because I thought, and with you scoring a hat-trick, because I thought, up yours, Gordon, all you'd said to me about this guy is now come home to roost for you. 5-3, he scored a hat-trick. Perhaps I wasn't as stupid as I'd sounded. And later on, you came up here, 1-2-0 up here, Arsenal, and you scored. I remember you coming off the field
Frank
with
Mahoney.
Mahoney.
The second one.
You with Mick Mahoney with your arms round each other because you were a good pal of Mick.
Yes.
Mick was one of my neighbours in Wickham where I lived, and I used to go to Burnetfield, to the Burton House in Burnetfield on a Wednesday night with Mick and sing Lost in France, which was the big song. We were lost in Burnetfield, actually, but that was the big song at the time.
Yeah, but he was great company.
He was a super lad. He was
Yeah.
a super lad. But you must surely have felt when you scored that hat-trick against Newcastle, it wasn't because it was against Newcastle, it was because it was against Gordon Lee.
Without a shadow of a doubt, John. What happened was that on the Thursday, Gordon Lee had done an article with the Sun newspaper, and it was like this double-page spread, and it was 2 pages of slagging me off. He didn't talk about the game. He didn't talk about the 2 clubs or what have you. And
that was wise, wasn't it?
Well, Alan Ball, who was the captain of Arsenal at the time, he came in and he just pinned it up on the dressing room on the notice board on the Friday morning. This was, and he said, "Right, before you all go today, read that." And so everybody went and read it, and they went, "Gee, what is this character assassination? This absolute character assassination." So Borley, he said, "Right, now you've all read it, we're going to get out there on Saturday and we're going to murder him. We are going to murder him, and this fella's going to be scoring goals. So come on, let's really go for it." And so Gordon Lee was his own worst enemy at times.
Oh, that was silly. That was absolutely
And he didn't half-wind all of the Arsenal players. I was wound up anyway, because you always are when you're playing against your old club.
Yeah.
And so out we went. And if I remember rightly, Newcastle took the lead.
Mm.
Yeah, they went 1-0 up. Mickey Burns, I think.
Yeah, Mickey Burns played well that day.
Yes. Trevor Ross, he equalised, who was our right-sided midfield player. Later went to Everton.
Mm.
And then Liam Brady knocked a great free kick in, and I got up on the far post and nodded that one in, and that made it 2-1. And then in the, I think it was in the second half, Frank Stapleton scored, and then I scored the 4th and the 5th. And
looking back, Malcolm, you have played with some good midfielders. When you think you had Hibby at Newcastle,
yes,
you had Chippy Brady at Arsenal, and you had Alan Ball, of course.
Alan Ball, yes. And Peter Storey was there as well. But of course, Tommy Cassidy was coming through in the Newcastle side and looking one hell of a player.
Yes, he was.
And there was Tommy Craig as well.
Did he ever play? Armstrong must have left before you went to Arsenal, did he?
No, he was there.
Because he was a Geordie lad from Hebburn, wasn't he?
That's right. Yes, I don't.
Oh, Geordie Armstrong was called.
I think he had left by. Oh no, he was there, John. But
when you first went,
I think he played. I don't
know
think
that
he played
game,
in
no.
that game.
But he was there when you first went, I think.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
When we look back, and we're not going to go into it now, but when we look back, injury was a terrible, terrible, terrible companion of yours at Arsenal, and ended your career very early. You never made 30 as a player, which is quite ridiculous. So because that happened, when you look back on the whole of your playing career, Malcolm, your 5 years at Newcastle, where you won all your England caps as well, must stand out really as the highlight.
And without a doubt, yes. They were the highlight. Yes, I got all my England caps whilst the Newcastle player.
Yeah.
But at the same time, some of the football we played was absolutely fabulous. It was scintillating stuff, and yet other times we were a complete disorganized rabble, and it was amazing how we could go from one to the other and back again. Then the following game,
it's called Newcastle United, Malcolm.
I think it is. Yeah. Yes.
Hereford 2, Newcastle 1, Manchester United 0, Newcastle United 2.
So that's right.
All in a week.
Yeah.
All in a week.
Oh,
but
no.
I mean, special days, Malcolm. We were delighted that you spent 5 years up here. I was delighted because I saw one of the greatest centre forwards we've had in our history and got a good pal in the bargain. So I won twice. And we're delighted that you came back at the end of all your playing and managerial career. You came back in.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed my time up here, but to a point, that I made an awful lot of friends, and there was always great atmosphere. Always great atmosphere, and it was so good to be a part of. When you think that I lived sort of a 20-minute drive from the training ground, 20 minutes to the football ground. When I moved to Arsenal, it would take me anything between an hour and a half and 3 hours to get to training. Life completely changed. And I realised what a haven Newcastle
had been.
Was. Yeah, it was a wonderful way of life, and
of course we talked about this being the highlight of your career and your England caps come here, but of course this was the club that, if you like, was built on number 9 legend. Before you there was Milburn. After you, there's been Shearer. It's part of the tapestry, isn't it,
John? Yes, and as soon as you, as a number 9, arrive, it hits you in the face. People let you know, and that you're following this tradition, but the pressure is there because it's all about doing the hardest thing in football. Sticking the ball in the net.
And of course, at Newcastle, people have either flourished hugely, like Milburn, yourself, Shearer, Les Ferdinand, Andy Cole to a certain extent, or have absolutely disintegrated.
Yes.
Under that sort of pressure.
Totally. And there have been many people who have come full of expectation, and yes, they've just fallen completely by the wayside, totally. And there's been a couple just recently, isn't there?
Yes, there's been too many just recently.
Yeah, yes, and the club. I can't say it's ever been really supported from the boardroom until Sir John Hall came in.
Yes.
And then then he wanted to really bring success to the club, and he and Kevin Keegan certainly did that. Then when Mike Ashley came in, Newcastle United was nothing but a financial supplier to Sports Direct, and it was getting nothing back in return, and there was no investment at all. the people who have it now, oh my heavens, they really are chalk and cheese, and I think that they have absolutely set Tyneside alive.
They have, without a shadow of doubt.
And it's been dead for 14, 15 years, for heaven's sake. And Mike Ashley killed, there's so many people who I knew, and they were mad keen football people who were absolutely fanatical about their club, and they would let their season tickets go. And because I think they just couldn't stand to see their club being purposely destroyed. And that's what was happening. And thank heavens that all ended, that Amanda Stavely got this deal put through. And thank you, PIF, for
absolutely.
You
know what's wonderful, Malcolm, is that we're allowed to live with hope again.
Oh,
and by the way, that's all the Geordies have ever asked for. Allow us to hope, allow us to dream, and we will be happy. Anything else is icing on the cake. I
hear people make the comment from down in the south that we expect too much of Newcastle United. That's a load of old nonsense. It really is. Malcolm. Yeah, that we hope. Oh, the hope is absolutely massive, but we don't expect necessarily.
Well,
but the hope, I think, that everybody is experiencing now, that hope comes full of optimism as well.
I mean, what I'm looking at now is that fella on the far left is going to see us win something for the first time, and it's something meaningful, the first time in his life, instead of just winning a corner. And this fellow on the right, who has been sitting around since 1969, thinking he's going to meet the fellow upstairs before he meets his silver trophy, is now refusing to go because we're going to win a silver trophy. Happy days are here again. Lovely
absolutely, yes, they are.
Stick round, the three of us, we'll see it.
Yeah, happy days, lads. And honestly, I mean, the feedback in the chat as always is great. Obviously, I'll just sit and do the photos. Rachel says, I love these chats between Malcolm and John. So interesting and totally entertaining. And John says, yeah, I agree, Rachel. I love these shows. Great show, lads. Says Paul, thanks for your comments. Lots of people really interested. David says, great chat, great memories from my youth years with Newcastle. So, Geordie Vinyl as well. Great show, lads. So, thanks for doing that, guys. Thanks for putting together that as well, John. And we will get back to business next week. We've got a lot to talk about. We'll be back to modern day Newcastle United next week and chatting away. I am back tomorrow night, of course, 6 o'clock with Geordie's here, Geordie's there. Join me with the panel as we see what is in store in the transfer window. But for now, it's a big thank you to Supermac and a big thank you to John Gibson. And I will see you next week, lads. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Take care, both.
Night.